I never thought my life would reach this point. A woman in her mid-40s, standing alone in a beautiful home, yet feeling more invisible than ever. My husband was always away. His business trips stretched from a few days to weeks at a time. And when he returned, it felt more like a routine visit than a reunion. Our conversations rarely went beyond surface-level chatter. Intimacy had long vanished. I maintained the illusion, cooked meals, kept the house neat, smiled at the neighbors, but inside I was disappearing. It was early spring when he told me he'd be leaving again, this time for nearly a month. I nodded like I always did, pretending to understand. I didn't question it. I never did. I had made peace with this life, or so I believed. Just a week after he left, my stepson Liam came home from college for spring break. He was 22, tall, polite, and had always kept a respectful distance. I had helped raise him since he was in middle school, so our bond had always been reserved, polite. But now he was no longer a boy, and something in the way he looked at me had shifted. It wasn't improper, not at first, but it was different. I noticed the way his gaze lingered. His compliments, once casual, now felt more personal. "You look really nice today," he said one morning as I poured coffee in the kitchen. I laughed it off, but something fluttered inside me. We started spending more time together, mostly by accident. He'd help with shopping, offer to cook, sit beside me for late-night shows. I tried to pretend I didn't feel the subtle change, but I wasn't naive. I noticed the tension every time his fingers brushed mine, every time he stood just a bit too close. One evening, we sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon. He told me he admired my strength, how I kept the family together, how I held everything in place despite being so often alone. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't used to being acknowledged like that. Not in a very long time. His voice was gentle, but full of truth, and it broke through the walls I'd built. I looked at him and saw something I hadn't before. A man who noticed I existed. A man who saw me. That night I couldn't sleep. His words kept echoing in my head. The way he looked at me, how I didn't move away when he touched my hand. I told myself it was harmless, just a moment. But I knew better. This was more than just loneliness. I had crossed an emotional line I could no longer ignore. The next morning when I saw him, his smile unsettled me. I found myself craving that warmth, that attention. I hadn't felt desired in so long. Scared me. I hadn't acted on anything. Not yet. But I knew I was close. And if something didn't pull me back soon, I wasn't sure I'd be able to stop what was coming. It was a Thursday night. The house was unusually quiet, the air thick with stillness. I had just finished cleaning up after dinner when the rain started falling hard. A loud crack and the power went out. The silence grew deeper. I lit candles and sat in the living room. Liam walked in holding 2 glasses of wine. "Figured you could use this," he said with a soft smile. I hesitated, then took it. We sat quietly, listening to the rain hit the windows. The wine lowered my guard. We talked, drifting from stories to feelings. He opened up about his own struggles, how lost he'd been feeling, how comforting it was being home, being around me. I listened, soaking in every word, surprised by how much it meant. Then he said, "You don't even know how amazing you are, do you?" I looked at him, confused. But he held my gaze. "You deserve someone who really sees you. Someone who makes you feel alive." My heart pounded. I should have shut it down. Told him it was wrong. But I didn't. I let his words in. I had been so starved for affection, for real connection, that in that moment, it didn't matter who gave it. I told him I often felt like I was disappearing in this house, like I had become a ghost no one noticed. He reached out and gently took my hand. I didn't pull away. His touch was calm, sincere, not demanding. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. His eyes met mine, not just seeing me but holding me there. He leaned closer. I should have stopped it. I didn't. Our lips met, softly, slowly. It wasn't rushed. It was tender, emotional, full of everything we hadn't said out loud. When the kiss ended, we sat in silence, both of us knowing we had gone somewhere we could never return from. I stood up and told him I needed to sleep. I walked away without saying anything else. But sleep never came. My thoughts spun, my heart raced. I knew what we had done was wrong. Not just the kiss but the emotion behind it. The betrayal wasn't only of my husband, but of myself. And yet I didn't feel regret. Felt alive. For the first time in what felt like forever, I had been seen, touched, wanted. The next morning I avoided looking at him. I moved through the kitchen like everything was normal, but I felt completely different. Liam walked in casually, but I could tell something had changed in him too. He was composed, more certain. Like a line had been crossed, and he didn't feel ashamed. He offered to help make breakfast. I nodded, keeping my eyes on the pan. The silence between us was thick, but not empty. It held something too heavy to name. We didn't talk about the kiss. It sat between us, unspoken but unmistakable. I kept telling myself it was just a moment, that I could forget it. But when his hand brushed mine again, I didn't pull back. When he stood close behind me to grab a dish, I felt my body respond without permission. I hated how much I wanted that feeling again. That afternoon I noticed him watching me, really watching. Not with casual glances, but like every detail mattered. My face, my movements, the way I walked. It had been so long since anyone looked at me like that. Not with obligation but interest. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop wanting more. Liam stopped making plans with his friends. He spent more time at the house, more time with me. Took walks. He stayed in for movies. He asked questions about my life, my past, my forgotten dreams. I realized how much I had given up for a marriage that never gave back. I tried to put up walls again. Told him this couldn't go on. That it was dangerous. He listened. Nodded. Apologized. But the next quiet moment, he whispered that he thought about me all the time. That I didn't deserve to cry alone in the dark, unnoticed by the man I married. And somehow, his words felt like they were patching up the pieces I had let break over the years. One night, he touched my face gently and said, "You don't have to keep pretending. You're allowed to feel something again." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The way I looked at him said enough. I had already fallen. Emotionally. Silently. Completely. I kept pretending I had control, that I could end it before it went too far. But deep inside, I knew I had already gone too far. And now, his break was almost over. The end was coming, and it pressed down on me like a storm cloud. He started packing. With every shirt folded, I felt something inside me start to collapse. We didn't talk about what came next. He didn't make promises. I didn't ask for them. I'd lived too long with empty ones to believe in them anymore. The night before he left, he came to me. Quiet, unsure. He didn't touch me. Just looked at me like he wanted to speak but couldn't. "I don't regret it," he said softly. "But I don't want to ruin your life either." I nodded, unable to find words. My chest ached. I didn't know if it was sadness or relief. When he left the next morning, I watched from the doorway. A stranger seeing someone walk out without ceremony. No final goodbye. Just silence. The house returned to its stillness. But now the silence wasn't peaceful. It was sharp, cold. Few days later my husband came back. As if nothing had changed. He brought gifts, shared work stories, laughed at his own jokes. He didn't notice the way I avoided eye contact. He didn't see how hollow I had become. I had given a piece of myself to someone else, and it showed. But only to me. I thought I'd be eaten alive by guilt. But instead I just felt empty. Not just for what happened, but for the years I had let pass without being seen. The real betrayal wasn't the kiss. It was the realization that a boy who wasn't supposed to matter had made me feel more alive in 1 week than my husband had in a decade. Liam texted once. "Take care of yourself." I stared at it for hours before I deleted it. I knew we couldn't continue. And I knew I couldn't return to the life I had before. It had changed. And that change couldn't be undone. My marriage looked the same on the outside, but inside it was gone. I lived each day beside a man who believed everything was fine while I carried the weight of a truth I couldn't share. Maybe that's the true punishment, not being caught but having to live in silence. Carrying what I knew, what I'd done, what I'd felt. I learned something in all of this. That love without presence is just routine. And attention without a future is just temptation. Somewhere in the middle, I lost a version of myself I'll never recover.